Yes, absolutely. You know her from our Women Who Rock show. She is the only woman that Jay has ever dyed his hair for.
No, both our guests, babe. Don't you remember?
Oh, yeah, you did
I both
Rainbow.
both our guests. I dyed my hair for. Yes, they're the only two women who rock
That's
that I
so
dyed my hair.
true. Only two women. Um, so our I'm introducing Alina Burroughs. She has a master's of science degree from UCF, and she has had an extensive crime scene career. She's worked thousands of cases, including several high profile violent crimes. She's trained in bloodstain pattern analysis, bullet trajectory, recovery of buried bodies, and documentation of skeletal remains, and is trained to investigate post blast environments, including weapons of mass destruction, terrorist bombings, chemical, biological, nuclear, and explosive environments. And in her personal time, she likes honing her culinary skills. She is a home chef and a baker. She's even made wedding cakes for her friends. And she enjoys cars, art, and she has a few tattoos, if you haven't noticed. If you haven't been able to get your eyes away from her striking fashion and her pink hair, if you do, you will see that she has a half sleeve. She also has a full back and a few more here and there.
And also was the host of Crime Scene Confidential for 2 years, and where she was
For
the
two
town and the yes and the
Yes,
armor. So,
and the
uh,
armor.
so yeah, that's one woman who rock is going to comment today, and the other one is Lisa Statman, who is has been in this game since 1989, folks. She was a production assistant on Dick Tracy, a second assistant director on Radio Flyer, A Few Good Men, Free Willy, Ally McBeal. I mean, Kitchen Confidential, Jake in Progress. So, and she was a director, Modern Family, Superstore, Life in Pieces, Fresh Off the Boat, American Housewife. She also has an amazing book, Restless Souls, the Sharon Tate's family account of stardom, the Manson murders, and a crusade for justice, which we will share in the chat and is in the description. So without further ado, Alina and Lisa, what is going on, guys?
Hey, everybody.
Oh,
How are you guys doing?
awesome. I can't wait to
Yeah.
dig into this.
Lisa was watching. I've been emailing with Alina, and Lisa was watching with us. We were watching the police videos, and she was in the chat chomping at the bit. They're both chomping at the bit to talk about this case. The first question I have for you guys is, when did you first? Do you remember when you first heard about this, and you know what your impressions were when you first thought about it? Alina, you go first.
Yeah, this happened while I was filming Crime Scene Confidential. And of course, I have been firing weapons on the show, both in season one and season two. And this is, probably the worst thing that you could think of happening. And, there are two DPs, directors of photography, that work on my show. And it just was always in the back of my mind every time we had firearms on set. It's the worst thing that I can imagine is injuring or taking the life of a crew member. I thought about it a little bit extra every time we had a scene where firearms were involved, especially because, I think the circumstance we didn't have a set, I guess we kind of were always in the field, but anytime there were firearms involved, and my position as the armorer and the talent was, a little bit more unique. I guess we didn't have the handoff, so it was my responsibility to ensure that nothing happened, and it was also my responsibility to, fire the weapons and make everything, look good and be exact and precise. But the ultimate responsibility is to make sure that everybody on the crew goes home. And this happening during both of those seasons was just always that voice inside my head. So yeah, it's impactful.
And yeah, we'll get into the handoff because obviously that's a major deal in this case. Lisa, when do you remember when you heard about it and what your impressions were?
I do. Obviously, it's always really shocking. I mean, anytime somebody loses their life on set, it is shocking. And the first thing that kind of always goes through your mind is, how could this happen? How could this happen when it's happened before with Brandon Lee? It happened with another crew member who had the gun in his hand and was making, jokes that he could commit suicide, and the wadding went off and actually killed him. And you go all the way back to Sarah Jones, who died on the railroad tracks. There are so many tragedies, and it takes these tragedies to fix things. And you think that they're fixed, and then something like this happens, and you go, what happened? And you just start immediately getting online going, what is information? I need to know the facts. I need to know who was where, what, when, and how, because you're so upset. And for me as a DGA member who was in charge of safety of a set, you immediately start going, this shouldn't have happened. It should not have happened. And it's mind blowing and upsetting. And you just want to scream at somebody because it happened again.
Go ahead, babe.
So tell us a little bit about your background with firearms being on the set. Lisa, we'll start with you.
I've had firearms on the set starting all the way back with Dick Tracy, where we had the vintage automatic weapons, firearms. Then you go to A Few Good Men. It was the military weapons. I did 3 years of a show called High Incident, which was a procedural talk show where we had no less than 10 to 20, depending on what we were doing on that show, because literally on that show, we would do a car chase, a shootout, blow up a building, and go to lunch. I mean, it was just that crazy, but we were always safe. And then, people think, oh, you spent the last 7 years on comedies. What can go, what are your experience with comedies? Well, first of all, you have paintball guns, which can be just as lethal if not used correctly. And you have a lot of stunts and effects. And you have, there's a scene on Modern Family where we had 11 children jumping into a pool. And you have to think about all those things. You can't just go, oh, let's just watch 11 kids jump into the pool. You make sure you have 2 divers underneath. You make sure you have a stunt coordinator up top. A lot of eyes watching at all times. So, that's my experience, and it's never stopped. And my training as an AD, being the safety officer of the set, it never stops. It just never stops. You're always looking to make sure people are safe.
Go ahead, Ali. What's your experience with that?
Well, there are processes for everything, and it's not just firearms. It's when it's exceptionally hot out. We filmed in Austin, Texas, and it was 105 degrees, and we were outdoors all day long. We were working with fire, and I was wearing full clothing plus a flame retardant suit. And so it's not just fire. You have an AD on scene to make sure that people are drinking enough water. You have somebody on scene to make sure that if you're filming and that I have to walk down a roadway, I can't be watching for cars, to make sure that cars aren't in that process. Like, there's somebody on set that watches out for safety. There are processes for every single thing that is done on set, whether it's television, whether it's movies. So I think when something like this happens, the first thing that's in our minds, especially with Alisa and I, with the experiences, we go, how could something like this happen? Because we know how many steps are involved with every single thing that is done on set. Anytime a firearm is used on a set, it's in a call sheet, right? Every day there's a call sheet for TV or film, and it says, this is what we're doing. It's our plan of what we're doing, where we're going, and how long we're going to spend on it. And if a firearm is on set, that day's call sheet says, hey, just to let everybody know, we're going to be using firearms today. That starts the day of using firearms, is literally just the heads up to everybody that one's going to be on set. That's how detailed the process is.
So,
and not only that, but with each call sheet, whenever you're doing stunts, effects, firearms, you're supposed to attach a safety bulletin every day, no matter if it's day 57 or day 1. There is a safety bulletin that is attached to the back of the call sheet that lets you know what the steps are, what you should be looking for as a crew member. If you see something going wrong, these are your responsibilities. These are your responsibilities. And like Alina said, there are so many steps that go into this, even in pre-production. There are so many meetings that happen before you ever start shooting. And that is going to entail what type of firearms, what type of loads are going to be needed. All of those things, when I say loads, there's quarter loads, half loads, full loads. All of those things are mapped out in detail during a production meeting so that everybody understands the safety precautions that have been put in place and what to look for if those safety precautions aren't in place. And there is a chain of command of who is responsible, at least on a film set or a television show. And that really starts with all DGA members, Directors Guild of America. They are first and foremost responsible. That goes for the production manager sitting in the office who's a member of the DGA. That goes for the director, the first AD, second AD, all the way down, every single person on an AD staff. And their main job, our main job, along with scheduling and all the other, getting the actors through hair, makeup, and wardrobe, our main job is safety. Hands down, across the board, safety is a first AD's number one responsibility. And I was watching that interview with Dave Hall, and they go, well, what's your job description? He's like, well, I am in charge of the scheduling and keeping us on schedule and going over the call. And I was like, dude, no, your number one responsibility is safety. That should have been the first thing out of your mouth, and it wasn't. And we'll get into it a little bit later, but every rule was broken all the way across the board on what happens with an armorer from the time that those guns go into a prop truck. Listen, if you're on a smaller show like Russ, there's going to be a cabinet or lockbox that holds weapons. If you're on Mission Impossible, there's going to be an armorer's truck. So it all broke down, and I've said it before, this is the perfect shitstorm of everybody not doing their job where things go wrong. And that's where things get really frustrating when you're talking about, dare I say, low budget things where you're scrimping and saving on the wrong thing, like an armorer.
Right. So I mean, let's get into it kind of. So first of all, you mentioned like keeping the firearm safe. It sounds like it was in a safe. It was the ammunition that was just everything.
No.
No, it wasn't. Go ahead.
No. From what that I have heard is that the care and control of these weapons was loosey-goosey. During her interview, she talked about how the guns would get dropped in the dirt, how, she didn't know where the guns were. She would bring them out in the morning, prep them, and then completely lose control of where those guns were. When an armorer takes a weapon out of the safe and preps them to go to set, those weapons never leave their eye line, period. Whether they're driving, taking it on a cart to set, whether it's sitting right outside the set, you don't leave those weapons ever under any circumstances. She's off in the prop truck getting, whatever props they need. Now, that's not entirely her fault. She should have put her foot down had she had Alina's experience, should have put her foot down, and she did many times, saying, I need help. I cannot be doing an armorer's job and going to get props. She said it in numerous texts and email to the production manager, who chose to ignore her and chose to say, I'm not paying you as an armorer today or anymore. And she specifically said it numerous times. So yes, this is all Hannah Gutierrez's fault, and I'll get into that. However, these people need to learn how to, especially the inexperienced, stand up for themselves and go, no, I'm not going to jail for you. And it's why so many other armorers turned down that job, because they weren't willing to pay what it takes to keep a crew safe.
It's 100%.
Those weapons never, ever leave their sight, ever. It's never like, and I'll tell you exactly what happened. I can see it. I've seen it so many times, and you hear the production manager and the line producer saying it, is that they were behind schedule. They were in a rush. They came back from lunch. Those fucking guns were sitting on a cart all through lunch without anybody keeping an eye on them. They went in to rehearse. I can hear that first AD right now. I need Alec's gun. I'm at the prop truck. You're going to have to wait. I can't wait. We're behind schedule. I need the gun. Fine, it's on the prop cart. Is it clean? Yeah, it's clean. He grabs the gun. Now, I'll get into a first AD's responsibility when they grab that weapon, which is never, but he grabs the gun, hands it off to Baldwin, and says, "Cold gun." And that's exactly how that happens, is people rushing and saying we're behind schedule and I need it and I need it now, and putting all safety issues aside.
Alina, have you ever had that experience where like it's like, or have you had to say something where it's like this is not safe, or has it always been safe in your
No,
experience?
absolutely not. That would never happen on anywhere that I would work. And fortunately, I never worked with a production company that would put anybody's safety in jeopardy. But Lisa's absolutely right. So a lot of times we work under conditions where there's time pressure. We have to get this shot before the end of the day, or we only have this location for so long, or we only have, whatever it is for this certain period of time. So certainly we work under time constraints. That's not an excuse, right? And so I think the thing that we'll see in trial that's going to save Hannah Gutierrez Reed is that she does seem to have brought this to people's attention. She said at one point, Alec needs more training, and they denied her that. She said, I need more help. They denied her that. She had two roles. She had, some sort of prop role. She had the armorer role. This is a Western. I don't know if you know this, but I feel like firearms are fairly central to the idea of a Western movie. I feel like they could afford a full-time armorer in this type of role. They needed a full-time armorer in this type of role.
He's skimping on as a UPM or a producer.
That is
never.
Not exactly. That is not the role that you skimp on. And that's exactly, what Alisa brought to our attention. What happens is that, and here's the only thing that I think, more people should have raised a red flag. Absolutely, the scenario you laid out is 100% what I think happened. What happens then is if somebody says, bring me the gun, and AD, Dave Halls brings the gun and says mistakenly, because he's got secondhand information, because he assumes that the gun is cold, and he hands the gun to Alec and says, gun's cold. Here's my thing. Alec is a fairly well-established actor. We know that. That should not be what he is accustomed to in this industry, because that is not the norm. The norm is that the armorer is, first red flag, the armorer is the only person that touches a firearm on set. The armorer should be the person handing him a gun, and Alec should be going, why is the AD handing me a firearm? That's weird. First red flag to Alec, who's an established actor. So even if Hannah is feeling pressure because this is her second movie that she's ever worked on, and she's 24, she could be exceptionally professional. She could be feeling pressure, but she could be going, shit, I don't feel like I should say something because I'm new at this. Alec Baldwin should be saying something. Why is the AD handing me a firearm? Okay, let's even get past that. So an AD hands Alec Baldwin a firearm and says, it's cold. The armorer should be handing him a firearm. The next step is the armorer holds a little meeting. They don't just hand off a firearm typically. The armorer hands the firearm to Alec, opens the firearm, shows him the ammunition that's inside, and says, look, these are blanks. Not just Alec, but the crew that is on set. These are blanks, right? They might take, we're talking about a revolver, right? It's not like they have to unload a full semi-automatic magazine. They pop the rounds out of the revolver and they show them. These are blanks. Blanks are visibly different because they don't have a projectile. They don't have a bullet in the end. They're actually crimped. So you can show, hey, it's crimped. This is a blank. They put them back in. They close the cylinder. They have a little meeting with everybody that's in that room. They show the crew, hey, everybody, these are blanks. Alec, these are blanks. They put them back in the gun. They give it to Alec. They do a little maybe last minute. Are you comfortable? Everybody's comfortable in this room. They close it up. They give it to him. They might even do a little last minute training if she thinks he's not comfortable, as she's previously stated. Hey, he was distracted during his training. He was on the phone. I think he needs an extra day. So maybe, as they stated previously, that they were blocking. Basically, in this rehearsal, they were lining up the shot. for the cameras. So they needed Alec to stand in position. They needed him to basically pretend like he was going to do the action so that the cameras could make sure that everything looked good. That was why he was in this position. They were lining everything up to make sure that cameras looked good. Why was he okay with being handed a firearm by an AD and he didn't go, this is weird? Why was he okay with not having that meeting? Why was the crew okay with all of this? Why did nobody in there go, hey, that's weird. Could we get the armorer to come in here and do this little meeting, this little safety brief? Because the safety brief is another thing that happens. The call sheet comes out, says firearms are being used. It has that safety, information on there, but the armorer also holds a safety brief. It's usually videotaped for insurance purposes.
If
And
I
they
can
say,
just say, yes, the armorer is there, but it is the first AD's responsibility to have a safety meeting. It is their responsibility to have a safety meeting at the beginning of the day to talk about everything that's going to happen and how to keep everybody safe. When a firearm comes on, how I operated when I was an AD is you meet the armorer offset at the cart, and I made them show me every single weapon. I checked the barrel, I checked the magazines, I checked the clips, I checked the cylinder on the revolver, whatever type of gun we were using, to make sure it was absolutely clean before that armorer even takes it onto set. I won't even allow, or wouldn't even allow, a weapon to be taken onto set until with my own eyes, and that is a first AD's responsibility. You then go in with the armorer, and if it's the stunt coordinator, if there's effects, and you hold a safety meeting, and then you turn it over. Alina, do you have anything else to add? Mr. Stunt Coordinator, do you have anything else to add? Before that happens, there should be plexiglass put up around each of the crew members who have to be there. Ear and eye protection. Anybody have any concerns? Anybody on this crew have any concerns?
where first aid is.
Yeah, none of this was done. Everything was broken down and everything was a mess. To Alina's point with Alec Baldwin, 100%, and I agree with her. I think that, in my experience, anytime, and I would be standing right next to the armorer as they showed the weapon to each of the actors or whatever. I never left their side either because I didn't want that weapon out of my purview. I know it's the armor, and if you're working with a good armor, you're pretty good, but it's still my set, my responsibility as an AD to keep all of those people safe. I would never allow that. And in all my years, I never had an actor who'd said, "No, I don't want to see it." Never once. Now, in the heat of the moment, and I am not defending Alec Baldwin, don't jump down my pants because I'm not. He's got a whole other reason of why I think he's guilty. But how this happens and why there's a breakdown when you have your first AD and your armor not doing their jobs and everybody else around them is that he's not in that moment. Actors are not thinking. And I don't know if you've ever stood around an actor before you roll camera. Some of them they look like homeless people mumbling to themselves because they're just going through their lines. Da, 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 da. Some of them, we're seeing they're reading their sides. The furthest thing from their mind in that moment is whether the gun that they've been handed is safe, assuming that they believe in the fact that the armor and the first AD, the stunt coordinator, whoever else is involved, is a good person and they're keeping him set. Now, in his past experience, I have no idea. I'm guessing he worked with much more professional people, much more safety conscious people. It's in the SAG guidelines, and I know I'm going to get a lot of heat for this. In the SAG guidelines, it is not an actor's responsibility for safety on a set. It says very clearly, it is your responsibility not to be reckless with the weapon, not to be brandishing it around, not to be using it or, playing around with it or holding it to your head or any of those things. It's your responsibility to keep yourself safe to check the gun. That's as far as an actor's responsibility is on set. And we should never count on actors to keep us safe. Because A, they only think about themselves most of the time. And B, their head's just not in the game. So
And I
yeah,
will
we can
say
go.
here, his experience hurts him here because he's been doing this so long. If you do something 2 times and 1 time it bites you in the ass, you're going to check. But if you do something 1,000 times and it never bites you in the ass, what's the chance you're going to check on the 1,001st time? You're
Yeah,
not. He's been
yeah,
doing this his whole career and it's never happened any other way. So somebody hands him something and he goes, thanks, and he keeps going.
By the way,
yeah.
how good are you guys? Look, Bob Mott is in the chat, and thanks Bob for the super sticker. How much responsibility lies? And you just answered it. So thank you. Without even did you see that in the chat? Look how good you are, Lisa. You added that without even us asking. And by the way, thank you so much, Bob.
Hi, Bob.
Bit. Go ahead, babe. Did you have something?
No, I was going to say, so a lot of people are wondering, Lisa, I think you'll know the answer to this. Does his culpability change when he's also the producer or a co-producer? Does that give him any more responsibility towards safety?
Yes and no is the quick answer. It depends on what type of producer and in what capacity he was producing. There are a lot of producers on sets. They're writers, they're agents, they're studio people, they're network people. A lot of people getting credits that as and salaries as an executive producer, producer, co-producer that are only taking home the salary and the credit. They have never stepped on a film set in their life. They wouldn't know, an apple from an orange. Now, let's look at Baldwin specifically. I don't know whether, and this is going to make a big difference, and we may find out in trial. Did he attend the production meetings? Did he know what was happening on a day-to-day basis? Now, here's a key thing. And he admits this during his interview, when he was leaving, I believe it was the day before, the camera operators or the camera crew tried to stop him to tell them that they didn't feel safe with the commute back to their hotels or whatever living arrangements they had. And Alec Baldwin said, I was in a hurry to get home to my family, to talk to my wife or to FaceTime or whatever it is. I knew they had issues with their housing, but hey, that was going to cost another $70,000 to $80,000, and we didn't have the money, and I didn't have the time to deal with it. Now, couple things. Did he know the budget because he was asking for other things and the UPM or the line producer said, hey man, maybe he had already gone to them to try and help the camera people. We don't know. Is that why he knew that it was going to cost an additional 70 to 80 grand? But that is different. Had one of those crew members driven home the long distance, and it's happened before in this industry, which is why we have new 14-hour rules, and died or hurt somebody else or killed somebody else, you could then look at Baldwin and go, dude, as a producer, you are responsible. You knew that these guys were driving long distances. You knew that they were exhausted. They told you they were exhausted. You're a producer that knew the situation. You are responsible. So until I hear what his role as a producer was, I'm not going to say whether he's responsible or not. I will tell you that the people who should be held most responsible and who are getting off clean, the line producer who is in charge of hiring the people, the production manager who is in charge of hiring the people and making their deals, those two women are skating by. And I don't get it. They're going after Baldwin, maybe rightfully so. I'm not defending him one way or the other. I'm just kind of laying out the facts. But these two women sitting back there, the UPM, the production manager, who had received multiple calls from the crew saying, it's not safe. We have a problem here. This gun is discharged. We're not safe driving home. We're not safe doing this. We're not safe doing that. She ignored every one of those. Everyone, including Gutierrez, saying, I need more time, I need more help, I need to be an armorer, not a prop person. Why has she not been brought up on charges? I don't get it.
Good question. One thing I noticed, and I want to, Lena, I don't know if you noticed, but it seemed to me Alec knew he kept lying about, he kept saying he got the gun from Hannah in the interview, which is not what happened. It is not what happened. And he did it multiple times. He also said he never pulled the trigger, which doesn't seem like it's true. So, Alina, I'm curious your thoughts on that.
Yeah, so we'll talk about that. So the first thing, you film long days, you film days after days after days that can start to look the same. So I'm thinking, I don't think he would intentionally lie about getting the gun from Hannah. I would like to think that he wouldn't. So we have a couple options, right? He either intentionally lied about getting the gun from Hannah to try to save his AD. I don't know why he would do that. I don't know what his relationship with him is that he would want to do that. I don't know. Or he just was confusing the day that he got a gun from Hannah. And he's thinking, well, she gave me a gun the day before. Was it this time? Was it that time? I always like to look at the non-nefarious options as well as, the more nefarious options. So who knows which one? I would like to know if he did get a gun from Hannah at some point to be able to say maybe he was just confusing his days. But I would like to examine the relationship he has with the AD to know if that was, he was trying to save his ass. Now, when we look at him saying that he didn't fire the gun or didn't have his finger on the trigger, or what his statement was about that. So here's where we get into a little bit of how that firearm operates. Now, is it possible for him to think that he didn't pull the trigger? Yeah, it's possible. But did he pull the trigger? Yes, right? Guns don't go off by themselves. We're talking about a single action 45 caliber revolver. So when I say it's a single action revolver, this means that when you pull the trigger, only one single action is performed. You must cock the hammer as a separate action. Okay. The difference being that some revolvers are double action or dual action, meaning that when you pull the trigger, it also cocks the hammer. So that would pulling the trigger would perform two actions. This was a single action. Okay. So to fire the weapon, I have to manually pull back, cock the hammer, pull the trigger. That's the way to expel a projectile out of this gun. The gun, these particular firearms usually have some safety mechanisms in order to keep you from slipping when you cock the gun and accidentally firing by pushing the hammer forward too quickly. It has like a half cock and a quarter cock. So if you were to accidentally be holding the trigger and pull the hammer back and drop it forward, it would not fire from the half cock or quarter cock position. It basically wouldn't be enough energy for the firing pin to move forward and fire the gun. So without boring you too much about firearm nomenclature. So when you cock the gun, what does that mean? It means the firing pin is on the other side of the hammer. All you're doing is spring loading it, right? Firing pin's on the other side. When you pull the trigger, all you're doing is releasing the firing pin forward so that it strikes the primer in the cartridge casing, sending the projectile forward. It's just two steps in a revolver, and it's one in a semi-automatic. Basically, it's the process in a semi-automatic is basically partially automatic, right? You're doing it manually with a revolver. It's semi-automatic. That's why it's called semi-automatic handgun. So he thinks that he didn't pull the trigger. He had to, okay? You got to cock the hammer. You got to pull the trigger to make a projectile come forward. You have to do those two things. What we want to know from the firearms analysis that will come out in court is what is the trigger pull on that firearm. So when they measure trigger pull, they basically put a weight on the other side of the trigger, and they want to know how many pounds does it take to engage that trigger. And usually on a semi-automatic revolver, it's between 4 and 6 pounds. It's kind of the average weight of that. When people say it's got a hair trigger, right, it means it's a little on the lighter side, like it only would take maybe 4 pounds of pressure to engage that trigger. There are things that you can do to a firearm to make it lighter, to require less pressure to engage that. I'm not going to get into how you do that. But that's one way that you can pull the trigger on the gun. That's likely what happened, right? The hammer was already cocked fully. And then he put pressure on that trigger. Now, maybe it was a little bit light. The only other thing that I can think of that is possible on that firearm. If you've seen Western movies, and this is what got me thinking about Westerns, is if you ever seen Westerns where they kind of held the gun at their hip and they would depress the trigger, keep the trigger pulled, and they would continuously pull the hammer back, right? They'd kind of keep it at their hip and then they would do this, right? That's how in the old Westerns, they would try to shoot faster with a revolver because that was pre-semi-automatic weapons. That's called fanning the gun. It's possible if he just didn't realize that his finger was on the trigger and he somehow pulled the hammer all the way back and disengaged it, it could have fired that way. There's the only two ways that you can fire that. But if he thought, well, I didn't pull the trigger, and he had already actually had it depressed, that's the only two ways you can fire that gun.
The way that because I don't know if you look through this, Alina, you can actually see when the one officer goes in, they do the video playback right on the onboard monitor, right? And you see the action, and the action is exactly what he said. He pulled it out, he lines it up, he pulls the hammer back, and you can see his finger trigger. And it should have never been there to begin with. That's,
right.
Safety 101. So it's really possible that as he was doing these actions, his finger pulled that trigger. It's right there. If he had properly had his finger sticking out like it's supposed to along the side of the gun.
On the trigger guard, not the trigger.
But now here's the big question. Does it matter that he pulled the trigger? Does it matter? Because had all safety precautions been in place before that gun was handed to him, it wouldn't matter if he pulled that trigger. And that's where I get kind of lost, because it's like, yes, he pulled that trigger. Yes, he was not very good with that gun. But does it matter? Because everything up until that moment broke down.
Right.
It shouldn't matter if he pulled that trigger or not, because there should have been nothing in the gun. And even
that's
if
not his job. Yep.
Yeah, and even if it had been loaded with blanks or rounds, quarter rounds, with the other stuff in place, even if it had discharged, nobody would have been hurt. And
potentially, though. But here's the only problem is, even if you have a firearm loaded with blanks, you don't, as an actor, you don't point it at a person. So as an actor, you still don't point a gun at a person. You still have to follow the 3 rules, the minimum 3 rules, right? You always assume it's loaded. You keep your finger off the trigger, and you only point at things that you intend to kill. So he still has to follow those rules.
True. And I promised everybody I was going to say why it's okay that he was pointing a gun at people. To my understanding, this is a very intricate shot. When I say intricate shot, there was one camera that was very tight on him, on the face up. When you're setting that shot up, the DP themselves and the operator and their assistant, who is also called a focus puller, is going to ask you to do this action numerous times as they get focus marks, right? So he's pulling it from here, they want a focus mark here. He's pulling it here, they want a focus pull here. Why do you think they ask him to cock it? I want to see what you're going to do. He cocks the hammer, right? All of those actions are necessary, which is why you have the plexiglass up and all the other things, because you are pointing it right towards the lens. And the only way you can do that, and while people are setting the shot, is that the focus puller, he can have a monitor off to the side. Sousa and Helena should not have been standing right there. However, I know the scenario, I've seen it so many times. Here's the camera, there's the onboard monitor, the first AC is here, the operator's here, Sousa's here making sure it's the exact shot he wants, and Hutchins is here and Sousa is here. They're all piled up right behind this camera because that is standard protocol. You want to get everybody in line so that there's not a lot of people all over. The plexiglass is up. Sometimes we put up Dubatine or sound blankets to double ensure that it's not going to go there. And you are asked as an actor to do the action. Now, nobody should be there at the time of actually firing. So in other words, once those focus marks are done, the lighting is tweaked, everything's done, everybody clears, including the operator and the first AC. They turn on the camera, you roll the cameras, everybody clears, and then he would take the shot. So that is the reason, and it is completely acceptable on a film set to be doing it in that instance. If he's out there, behind camera and he's pointing a gun at, that's a whole different scenario. But in that moment, he did have to point that camera, and they were there, and that's kind of standard operating procedure too, because you're assuming that all safety precautions and you have a cold gun. And that is probably one of the reasons why the AC, the camera operator, Helena, and Joel Souza felt comfortable there, because everybody heard from Dave Hall's cold gun. So they all come in.
And Dave Hall made a deal.
Yeah. Somebody that should be in jail today is him. And so yes, there is a time and a place on a film set where that gun is going to be pointed at people. It's just the way it goes when you're setting up a shot.
And I agree. I don't think that we're going to see Alec Baldwin take much of the blame for this. I think it's going to go backwards. We know for a fact that they're looking.
I don't think they have a case. That's where I keep going.
Yeah.
The producer part, not sure about. That so much of that remains to be seen. But as an actor, it is not his responsibility. Should he? Somebody like George Clooney's like, come on, man, you check that gun, you don't do this, you don't do that. That's his way. This is Baldwin's way. I just don't see the case holding up as far as the actor part. I just don't.
First of all, I want to, you guys, this has been amazing so far, but we haven't done a good job. We've been sharing. Make sure to check out Alina and Alisa on Twitter, Instagram. Check out Lisa's book, everyone. We're sharing the links. Thank you all so much for being here. I'm curious your guys' thoughts on why the fuck is there a live ammunition on that set? Why is there live ammunition on that set? How many people have seen it? How could that possibly have been a thing?
Did you guys catch how quickly they knew it was a live round? Baldwin and Dave Halls are sitting on the tailgate of that truck on the officer's body cam. And Alec Baldwin goes, how the fuck did a live round get on that set? And Dave Halls is like, oh no. Alina, I'll let you take the lead on that one. Go ahead. But they knew.
Well,
right away that it was a live round.
That's the big question, right? Now, I think they knew immediately that it was a live round because of the cartridge casing that was left inside the revolver. Because, well, they knew it wasn't a blank.
And by the way, it wasn't just one live round. It wasn't just one live round. They found 6 live bullets on that set. One taken from Gutierrez's hands when the officers arrived, by the way. One in a bandolier on a cart. One in Alec Baldwin's holster, on his prop holster. And one sitting on the cart itself. There was a total of 6 live rounds on that set, not just the one anomaly. 6.
And Gutierrez Reed still says she has no idea how any of the live ammunition got on set. Obviously, special prosecutors are bringing up past, they're bringing up history, they're bringing up potential drug use, they're bringing up what we're going to see come out at trial is, the first movie set that she worked on, The Old Way. There were 2 accidental discharges that took place on the set of The Old Way. Neither one were by Gutierrez Reed. And we seem to have some mixed stories coming out of that set too. She did a podcast where she said, I wasn't sure about taking the armor role on The Old Way, but in the end, everything went really smoothly.
Which, of course, we know it did. Nick Cage was screaming, yelling, and going, who is this armor? And get her away from the set. She's not qualified. I mean, there were all kinds of...
fired. There's 2 accidental discharges on set. People were complaining. But if you ask Gutierrez Reed on the podcast, she says everything went smoothly. We've got people saying that she's exceptionally professional. We know her father is a trained sharpshooter. He was the quick draw specialist on Django Unchained. She grew up on the set of 310 to Yuma that was actually filmed at Bonanza Creek Ranch. What's going on? Is there, are they going to be bringing about her history, potential text messages? We just saw a hearing about the whether or not they were going to allow these text messages that show marijuana use, possibly her handing off a small bag of white substance to somebody for safekeeping. And, prosecution is obviously going to use that to establish her history of poor judgment.
There's also a text between her and her father where he says, "Did you find the 45 rounds? No, I haven't. You need to look deeper and find them." Now, it's unclear to me whether that was before the incident or after, but he knew that there were live rounds on that set. They have found the rental house where they get the ammunition and the guns. They went through everything there. There was no evidence that she tried to blame it on them. Well, they must have mixed them in. They went through that. They're now testifying against Gutierrez for the prosecution because it wasn't there. There's only one person on that set that brought live rounds in there, one person that has access to ammunition and weapons, and that's Gutierrez. And Alec Baldwin has said this many times. Why are we burying the lead? The lead is, how did a live bullet get on this set? And he's 100% accurate.
Yep.
He's 100% accurate.
Babe, I have a question, but do you have a question? If you do, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I'm curious. I'm curious. Do you think because of her dad, she got a job that she shouldn't have had on this set, and that led to some of this? Like, her dad is this big time armor. Like, was she unqualified to be on this set?
Oh, she was 100% unqualified to be on this set. A. B, yeah, the sad thing is on some of these low budget things, nobody picks up the phone to go, "Hey, how were they on their last film?" If you're hiring a contractor for your house, you want recommendations. Most producers, most production managers don't pick up the phone. They go, "Hey, are you," and by the way, I think it was 3 armorers turned this production manager down because she wasn't willing to give them their fee or the assistance that they felt needed, nor did they want to work as assistant props when there was going to be weapons on set every day. So you go after the next person that you can find who's willing to take this deal, and it's 9 times out of 10, 9.5 times out of 10, 10 times out of 10, going to be the inexperienced young person that needs the job and the credit to move up in the industry. Maybe her dad had a hand in it or not, but I don't think that was the case. I think it was more that production manager and the line producer going, "Hey, she's in the budget. Let's bring her in."
And these are people, by the way, that are not, like you said, are like, no one's pointing the finger at them.
Mind blown over that. Mind blown over that.
By the way, did they need to set up that shot? Did they need the actual gun? Could they have used a dummy gun while they were like, do they need that actual gun in that shot while they're just setting up a shot?
No. The only reason that they may have had the weapon, and I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt. However, Jensen Ackles and the other actor are behind them with their actual weapons on them as well, by the way. The only time you would do that is, again, for this very intricate shot. Should they, if they had the budget, had replicas made? Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Replicas should have always been available for any scene where they're not taking it out of the holster, for any scene that you're lining up a shot, for any scene that you're rehearsing. Of course, there should have been a replica made. But, again, you're talking about a low budget film, and they were like, "Nah, we don't need a replica. We'll just make sure the gun's not loaded when we bring it in." It's a problem.
I know. I'm going to go even further, and this is going to piss off armorers, but because I think we have a lot of armorers, we have a lot of stunt people, we have a lot of skilled people that ensure that things like this don't happen, right? This is the not the norm. This is the exception to the rule. But why would we chance anything like this happening again? We have progressed to the point where we have computer generated imagery. We have CGI that does these massive explosions, right? You don't think we're out there actually creating the explosions that you see.
Unless you're open.
Yeah. Sorry, Michael Bay. But we can create very small explosions from guns. We don't need a blank. We don't need a real firearm to make this little explosions. We suspend reality all the time when we go to the movies. We can suspend a little bit of reality to see a CGI firearm go off,
And to
and
one
to
step further,
save people's lives.
everybody's reason for not doing that is, well, you don't get the recoil. There are guns that are set to have the recoil without ever shooting anything. It has a
That,
recoil in the
thank
butt
you.
of the gun that will give you the recoil. So you can't even use that as an excuse.
It's
And I've heard
not
that.
that hard. You
No.
can buy those, and if you're that bad of an actor that you can't make a small motion with your hand, then I'm sorry. But I'm just going to throw that out there. Really, I mean, I don't ever want to think about my DP not going home to his wife and his daughter because of an accident. And I can control the firearm that I shoot. I can control certain things, but there are also things that we can't control, like firearms having innate problems with them, which also happens, right? Barrels can explode. There can be other things that go wrong with firearms that aren't always things that we can foresee. There can be problems with ammunition. You know, yes, good armorers inspect firearms, they inspect ammunition, they do all of those things. And there are fantastic people out there that do all of these jobs, and it's not worth it.
No, 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 no.
Got another question, another super chat from Shiraz. Thank you, Shiraz. Thoughts on actors that discharge all chamber dummies into the ground as a last check before using the guns in the scene?
So just a matter of semantics. Dummy rounds don't have gunpowder, so you can't discharge them. It would be a blank. Blanks don't have projectiles. I'm just being a science nerd because that's my job. Honestly, I don't have a problem with it if you're in a safe location. If you were at a fire, if you were at a gun range or something and you felt like you just wanted to go over in the corner and shoot into a mound or something, then whatever, go for it.
Here's
safe.
the thing. Again, with the safety protocols, right? The guns are brought in, inspected by the AD, inspected by any crew members. They're loaded, roll the cameras, shoot the scene, firearms are discharged. You cut. Nobody enters that set until the armorer has collected each weapon, emptied out the magazines, emptied out the chambers, emptied out, what the clip, whatever it is. Until he says safe set, nobody steps into that set. So as far as an actor discharging, no, absolutely not.
Yeah.
Well,
not on armors.
The armor.
You keep saying protocols, and that's the one thing watching those videos. It's like no one knew the protocols. It was like, it was so bizarre to be like, especially Dave Halsey's like protocol, like I don't know. Like, do you think? All right, let me ask you this. Now there's, go ahead, Lisa.
I was just so appalled watching him. I wanted to reach through and grab him by the neck. I was just so, his sole job is the safety of those 150 people around him. That's his only freaking job in a situation like that.
Right. Do you think this lawsuit and this big public thing that's happening now will help for future maybe productions like this one where they're not so fast and loose? Do you think this will set any sort of example, or is it going to just be the same for going forward? Alina, go ahead, Lisa.
I think it's going to, here's the problem. They're going after the big fish of Baldwin, right? He's not going to be in charge of hiring the next crew, the next low budget, crew that's going to come in there. He's not going to have anything. The production manager, the line producer, the producers that are on set every day, they got fined $100,000. You think that's going to deter them? No, insurance covered that. They're not going after the people that they should be going after. I know Halls is part of one of the lawsuits. If you don't get to the heart of the matter, the meat of the matter, you're not going to fix this situation, because those same people they're already on to 3 other projects. They've already, found their next armorer that's willing to work for $5 an hour. They're going after Baldwin. Okay, maybe it's right, maybe it's wrong. I don't know. He's not going to make that change. And sadly, what happens, this happened with Brandon Lee all these years ago. There was all kinds of gun safety that was going to happen. Here we are all these years later, same shit, different year. If you
Well,
don't go after go ahead, Alina.
Hopefully it could start some accountability, right? Because I think that's the thing that it's lacking is accountability for the appropriate parties. So, maybe what comes about from this is some legislature that rolls downhill. If Alec isn't responsible for this, which I don't really think he is, but like Alisa says, there are the people that are hiring, there are the people that are slowly sinking down in their seats because they know, no pun intended, they dodged a bullet here. So we need some accountability that rolls downhill that says not just Alec, but the people that are at the production companies and the networks that hire these production companies and so, all of those people will be held accountable monetarily because that's what really matters to them.
And never be allowed on a film.
For these events.
Ever. Yeah. 100%. 100% spot on, Alina.
Go ahead, babe.
Do you think that, so I feel sort of like some of the things were brushed off because they had this safety net of being like, well, COVID was going on. I don't know if you got I don't think that that's a valid reason. However, I feel like COVID got like roped in there somehow with like, it was like these people are walking off the set and, like, I don't know. I just was wondering if you.
The one camera operator said that he felt that COVID protocols weren't being followed. And, really what that means as far as safety is people not wearing their masks, people, basically not wearing their masks. That was really the only protocol that was truly in place. And craft service and caterers being careful and everything being separated and all that stuff. As far as COVID having anything to do with this, no, absolutely not. In fact, there were more safety officers on set when COVID was around than there were previous to that. So if anything, they were a little bit safer. That's just my 2 cents.
Go ahead, Alina. What do you think?
Yeah, no, COVID had nothing to do with that.
So, I mean,
go
ahead.
Safety issues that the crew members were concerned about, as well as the discharges and the driving and all the things. I just realized I'm in this very ghostly, like the sun set here in Los Angeles around me.
Now, if crew felt unsafe, if they were in an unsafe environment because of, the armor or automatic discharges or accidental discharges, or because of the hotels and whatnot, if they felt that COVID were a viable excuse because they didn't feel comfortable coming forward and saying, I'm not okay with this armor, or I'm not okay with whatever was actually going on set, I think COVID might have become just a throwaway excuse, right? Yeah, they're not following COVID protocol because they didn't really want to come forward and say they're too cheap to provide what it really was. Then that's the only way that COVID could have possibly come into play here, but it's not an excuse for the actual event.
No, right. And you got to remember there were multiple crew members that called that UPM or texted that UPM and said, we have, hey, hi.
Hi. Karen with the save.
We have an issue with the armor. We have an issue with these weapons discharging. It happened on 2 separate occasions. One in a stunt person's hand, one offset. Whatever the case was, they were complaining. They were voicing their concerns. And I don't know if you caught this, but David Halls immediately threw that script supervisor under the bus, Mamie Mitchell,
yes.
I think.
Yes.
And you want to know why? Because she's sitting right there in Video Village and she sees all the action. And he even said she's been in the business for 30 years and she's mouthy and she's just, I've had issues with her. You know why he had issues with her? Because she was in his face all the time going, why didn't you have a safety meeting? Why aren't you taking care of this? Why aren't you taking that? Somebody with 30 years experience knows what a first AD should be doing. And so she was in his face and he front ran that so fast and threw her under the bus going, oh, she's a little loco in the capes up there. No, she's not. She was in his face telling him to do his job, and he didn't.
And I think you
I,
said,
I've
I think you said in the chat, if there were a couple discharges, you would have just shut it down and be like, "What are we doing?" Like you would have got everyone together, and be like, "What are we doing, guys?" Like if that ever happened on your set that you were working on.
a first AD, any DGA member, has the ability to shut down production in the moment, at any point, any time, until something. I've only done it 3 times in my career. One time we're doing a driving shot where it's a tow vehicle. And I had already talked to the DP who said he wanted his guys to be handheld on this insert car. And I was like, why? They don't need to be handheld. Put it on the dolly, call it a day. No, they're going to be handheld. Went back and forth for 2 hours, finally agreed to let them be handheld, which means the camera's on their shoulder, if they were completely harnessed in. And that means if you're harnessed in, you can't move. If the insert car gets bumped, they're not going to go flying off the side, all those things. We take off, we start moving, and I see this fucking operator unharness himself and go up on the windshield. I shut that production down so fast, I kicked him off the set. You have that ability as a first AD. It is your responsibility to shut that set down. And if you don't have the balls to do it, go find another job.
No, you can't go.
Now, would he be scared, like he'd be upsetting Alec or Joe Suze? Like if he did that, or that shouldn't matter. If he says something, everyone.
Care what the actors thought. The director at the time, I was a first AD. First ADs have that ability, not just directors. First ADs have the ability to shut production down in a heartbeat if they don't think it's here. I had the director yelling at me, keep going, it was a great take. Who's the insert car driver going to listen to? His first AD, because he knows if he keeps going, he's in trouble. So, yes, you are always going to have people in your face telling you you're wrong, you're this. Listen, I had a showrunner that I shut down production on because he insisted on putting a 14-year-old on a 3-wheel motorcycle, which I had told him he couldn't do. I come back from lunch, he's on the street with him. I shut down production, got in my car and said, find another AD. And I just sat there until the producer showed up and took control. So you should not. And it comes with experience, and that's part of Gutierrez's problem, is she allowed Baldwin to roughshod her during this training session. But again, as a first AD, if I have a training session with an actor with an armor, there is always going to be a member of the AD staff there for rehearsals, for training, for freaking dance rehearsals. I will have an AD there for that, to monitor, to make sure nobody gets roughshod over, because actors will do it all the time. They just will.
Speaking of Hannah, we just got a super chat from Kimmy's Blessed. Thank you so much. Alina, I don't know if you answer this. During Hannah's interview, she said she shook each round and they all rattled. Do you think she lied and maybe didn't rattle them? What do you think about that?
That would be a dummy round, not a blank. So dummy rounds have they've been drilled out. So there'll be a hole in the casing and they put a BB inside it. So it rattles if you shake it. So those just don't have any gunpowder in it. That would not be used for that shot because they wouldn't be able to actually make a muzzle blast go off. So dummy rounds are used if you want to have the look of ammo, like in a scene where the actor is loading the weapon, something like on a tight shot or a shot that's really close, if Alec were like putting the rounds into, and you need to be able to see that it has a projectile on the end, whereas a blank doesn't have a projectile on the end. Can't use it for that shot because it's just crimped on the end. There's no bullet in the actual end of it. So that's the difference between a blank and a dummy. Both of those are used on set, but for that particular shot, we know it wasn't a dummy round because dummy rounds don't have gunpowder. Without gunpowder, that would not have happened. There would have been no bullet, no projectile, nothing would have actually happened because without gunpowder, there is no explosion.
Awesome. Babe, got anything?
I am applying all the knowledge that they tell us back to the interviews. I'm like, oh my God, that was a big deal. That, whatever, whenever they're saying something. So my brain's busy.
Well, I'm curious, is there anything that we haven't brought up that we've asked you that maybe we're missing, that maybe we don't think about if we don't work on a movie set, that things that happen that you were like, this is a major problem that we haven't already discussed? Was there anything else that like we haven't gone over that you look back and like, this is a major problem?
On this set here?
Yeah, on this in this case, like anything that maybe comes up in trial that we aren't anticipating, or something that we didn't discuss. I know Alina talked about, an issue is going to be the text. Like, was she, on drugs? That's going to be obviously a big thing. I was just wondering if there's anything else that came up you think that maybe we didn't go over that they should have been paying attention to that they weren't, or we didn't really talk. I mean, we kind of talked about it, but like people walked off the set the day before, and then there was like some question of sabotage. Like, I wonder if that's going to come up in this trial.
I saw that thing about the sabotage, and possibly it was a disgruntled employee, and there's all kinds of theories of, did somebody who was upset or wanted Gutierrez fired put the bullet in there? And again, you have to go back to the chain of command with an armor, weapons, and everything else. There would have been no chance for anybody to have done that, A, if she had been doing her job. B, we have the text from her father going, did you get all the 45 rounds? C, they were found in 6 different places, not just one bullet that was like slipped in and could have gotten in. Nobody sabotaged the set. Gutierrez, in my opinion, somehow, for whatever reason, brought those bullets to set. She had a habit of like being the cool Joe and look what I've got. There are kinds of rumors that offset or off hours they were doing shooting live rounds with these weapons, which is a huge fucking no on top of everything else. Not during filming, not during the 12-14 hour shoot day, but perhaps on the weekends or whatever, they would take the guns out, and they call it plinking, I think is what the term everybody's been using. But you're going out and target practicing. That is my best guess. Again, it could be that all these crew members come forward and go, never fucking happened. But if that happened, my guess is that accidentally she had 6 or 7 rounds. It may have been pile over here and a pile over here, and as the truck's moving, they all just went, and she wasn't smart enough to go, there may be 45 rounds in there. It may be the reason why Daddy was going, did you get all the 45 rounds out of there?
What do you think, Alina? Anything we're missing out on that we're not talking about?
No, but that makes sense. Does she panicked, in this mode of panic, call Dad and go, Dad, I fucked up. I think somehow 45 rounds got mixed in all all whatever, and I don't know where they are. And he's like, well, you better find them, and then later she deletes all that string of text messages. And then later we see one that says, did you get all the 45 rounds, right? Is that a possibility? Could be, the CSI in me is hoping that they collected all of those and, like fingerprinted them or something, maybe to show that she was the one that had loaded them into the weapons. I doubt they did. We know nobody was tested for any kind of drugs or alcohol. We know that no kind of drug evidence was collected from the scene. If they are, the judge did allow text message evidence from Gutierrez Reed to be allowed in, but only that which was in close proximity to the shooting. So this is not going to be character assassination of her to try to say, look, this girl's a drug addict and da-da-da. It's just going to say, look, what she did in the hours previous or in the hours prior to the shooting is pertinent. It could show that she was, it shows that she has, poor decision-making, bad judgment. Could she have been intoxicated or from drugs or alcohol? That I think they're not going to be as likely to try to prove, because we don't know. It's anybody's guess as to whether or not she did this. Does she have a medical marijuana card? What's her tolerance like? How frequently or often does she, like, all of that is absolutely anybody's guess, and it could not be proven because they did not do any type of drug or alcohol testing. So I doubt anybody would allow that type of line of questioning into court, but they will allow the text messages or any photographs that were sent via text message, hoping that they have photographs of her hotel room. Would that show if there was any live ammunition that was stored in her hotel room? That, I think, would be a big clue.
Also, remember, while she's sitting in that interrogation room, when they leave her alone, she's calling somebody I think it was there. It may have been in the police car. Somebody out there correct me, because you all know this case inside and out. There's a point where she's asking somebody to get her fanny pack from the set. She's asking them to gather pieces that she's left there, and in my opinion, may be valuable evidence that she is asking somebody else to get. Were there more bullets in the fanny pack? Did the police get the fanny pack? Did they get it before the person got his hands on it? It seems to me like she understood pretty freaking quickly that this was a bad situation. If Baldwin and Halls immediately understood that this was a live round, you see them show Baldwin in the interrogation room. This is the bullet we took from Joel Souza. And he looks at it and he goes, that's a real bullet. In that moment, he knew. He knew sitting on the tailgate. They all knew. So she certainly knew what happened.
And she certainly does not know that there's no expectation of privacy in a police station to be making those phone calls.
Well, what's the deal? Why was she? I know we had Joe Jackalone on. He's like, no phones. Why do they have? First of all, they had phones in the interrogation room. Why were they allowed to have them in there? Second of all, why did they let Alec? He's like, all right, I'm just gonna go back and get changed, and I'll meet you guys. Like, what did you guys think about the investigation? To me, that was sus, as the kids say. It seemed like it was very fast and loose. Like, people in the interrogation room were like, Alina? What did you think? As an experienced CSI, like, what were your thoughts when you saw that?
I think they were probably very quick to determine that this was, clearly an accident, because they're going, Alec Baldwin doesn't have any ill will and certainly wouldn't want to take out his crew. So I think that right there, they assumed that this was an accident. Now, we don't want to assume that anything is an accident, because that's when things get overlooked. So I would always prefer to just immediately say, hey, we're going to do this by the book. We're going to take your clothes. We're going to take photographs of everything. Now, of course, I'm sure that Alec Baldwin would have not been pleased with that method of investigation. But to be honest, it's not for Alec Baldwin's comfort and safety. Or his sense of security, let's say. It's for the family members of Helena Hutchinson. That's what it's for. It's not really, I'm not here to make Alec Baldwin's life easy.
Karen's in the chat with one word, starfucker. Another Woman Who Rock alumnus. But yeah, I don't know. What did you think? What did you think, Lisa, when you were watching that? How that went down?
There were a couple things. I think that he overcompensated for his nervousness, because he realized right away that a live bullet had come out of that gun. That's number one. Number two, I did find him in the police camera, body cam footage, that he was trying to do whatever they wanted. He was like, listen, what do you want me to do? Well, we'd like to interview you down at the station. Great. Do you want me to get in your car? I don't know. You want me to drive? I'm happy to drive myself down there. And the officer himself is going, and he's not giving him an answer. So Baldwin, as actors will do, goes, I'll tell you what, I'm going to go take this wardrobe off, and I'm going to get into my street clothes. I'm going to get into my car, and I'll be sitting right here when you're ready. He is trying to be as accommodating as he can in that moment. And he's not really getting a lot of lead from this cop. And then he starts to take his vest off, and the cop's like, whoa, whoa, whoa. And he's like, okay, what do you want me to do? He is asking, and he's looking for direction, as most actors will, whether it's a director or a cop. He's looking for direction, and he's not getting any really good answers. And he is trying to be helpful, my opinion.
Yeah, that cop is probably busy just trying to think of protocol in his head, and the only thing going through his head is fuck. He's literally trying to go like, do I call my sergeant? Do I call the sheriff? What do I do? Do I take his clothes? Do I just and in the meantime, Alec's like, hello?
Can I help you?
Do you want me to? And the cop's just like,
that's a great point too that you make, Lisa, is that he was in a costume. He's not thinking like, I'm getting rid of clothing, like I'm changing clothes because a crime happened in these clothes. He's thinking, if I don't get this back to wardrobe, costuming is going to be pissed off at me. If I wear this out and about, I can't do that. Like that's a protocol as well. That wasn't something that he did in order to destroy evidence or
no. No,
you
and
know.
in fact, he's got prop blood on him, and the cop looks at him and goes, "Is that real?" And he goes, "No, no, 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 no. There is no real blood on me." And he is trying to be helpful. This is one instance where I didn't feel like he was roughshotting anybody. He's like, "Give me direction, dude. I will do whatever you want. Just tell me." And the guy wasn't, so he starts making suggestions. You know,
And at that point, they probably don't know what's happening medically with anybody because she was transported, and Joel, I think, was, I don't, his injuries weren't life threatening, obviously, so he's getting medical treatment. But everybody that was injured at that point had been transported, so he's likely
well,
just like, okay, they're getting help, and what do you need from
Helene
me?
had not been transported. She was still there. And that same cop goes to the ambulance and says, "How's she doing?" And they say, "She's stable, but in critical condition." And some of the people were coming up going, "Why aren't you transporting?" Because the helicopter was, standing by. And they said, "We have to stabilize her before we put her on the helicopter." So to your point, Alina, the last thing that anybody heard was critical but stabilized.
Right.
And so
He's
no,
thinking, okay, everyone's going to get help. Like, he's not thinking I just killed somebody. He's
right,
thinking, all right, they're getting the help they need. What do you guys need from me?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I mean that was very clear in his interview. And then when he finally gets told, he's like, "I'm out of here." Like he is clearly in shock, and
yeah,
he's just doing it thinking like this is an investigation for why the shooting. He doesn't think that someone died, and really they didn't even know. They came in later at the end. And then when I think I don't know what point they found out, but
yeah.
um,
You see him become devastated. I mean, he just crumbles. Again, not giving him any props or anything, but you know, at least he was a caring human being, that a human being lost their life and he was involved in that. And he kept saying that on his cell phone. He's like, "Jesus Christ, Jesus Christ, Jesus Christ," that the gun was in my hand. He was genuinely um, no disregard for a human being in his attitude, as far as I'm concerned.
yeah, and if, I saw questions in the chat. Yeah, folks, the trial's starting for tomorrow. The jury was picked today for Hannah, and it's starting tomorrow. I have a stream set up. It's supposed to start 8:30 Mountain Time, which is 10:30 Eastern Time. So that's set up. And then Giovanna says Jay surrounded by smart ladies. Absolutely, this has been amazing. You guys have been so awesome and given us so much insight on this that I don't think any of us knew. So like, I can't thank you guys enough. Do you guys have any final thoughts? Any final thoughts before we end the stream about the case, Alec's case, Hannah's case, the trial, anything that we didn't go over that you want to go over?
Um,
I will say that this is such just a perfect storm of terrible things. I think it was just bad decisions from I think everybody played a role in this. I don't think there's one single person that we could really point at and say, this is your fault. I think if we looked at it from the perspective of who could we remove and this absolutely would not have happened, it's Hannah Gutierrez Reed, because she's the one that provided the ammunition, right? But we have to look forward, and every time we do this, I think of, this is not a Monday morning quarterback. We're not here to say, so and so should have done this or should have done this from the negative perspective. I always look at this as, what could we do better? What could we do better as armorers or actors or ADs or people in the industry? And everybody's going to have an opinion on the case. Everybody's entitled to that, but we should at least make sure that they're educated. And in the industry, what do we learn from this? And that's why I'm really hoping that we see some right people being held accountable, some potentially legislature that comes down saying, hey, production companies, maybe you think twice when you're doing the hiring process for this. Maybe just because somebody will work for cheap doesn't mean they should. Maybe when you hire an armorer, they shouldn't probably be doing props and wardrobe and, 3 other things too. Maybe we should allow the people that are doing a life or death job to focus on that life or death job. You know, in my show, I did, you know, hair and makeup and forensic consultant and talent and sometimes armorer, and those things are fine to do together. There are certain jobs that you don't want people to do simultaneously with other things. And you know, for the future, like I said, I think CGI is just fine. It's fine for me as a viewer. I think we can all come together and say that if other people go to work and come home from work, that we can deal with a little CGI firearms.
Great point. What are your thoughts, Lisa?
A lot of what Alina just said, and to the point, you know, there are diehard people out there that are directors or what have you who are going to want real weapons on the set. And to that I say, okay, but there has to be X amount of training. There has to be X amount of safety, you know, more than one armor. There has to be a lot of eyes on that set. For me, when I used firearms, if it wasn't a daily thing like high incident, always had a stunt coordinator there. Always, because I need another set of eyes. You know, I do have other responsibilities. If I'm directing, I'm trying to figure out the next shots and, you know, all these other things. I want another set of eyes that is another safety person that goes, whoa, 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 how, stop. Everybody just stop. You want that person. And stunt coordinators are really good guys at doing that because they don't countenance shit from anybody. You know, if they're a good stunt coordinator, they will shut it down quicker than anybody else as well. So, you know, if we are going to continue to use firearms on set, there have to be so many new safety precautions in place before we should allow that even. And I will say that, you know, things happen on sets no matter how much prep and how much safety you put into it. You know, on my very first set, we would have numerous production meetings, coordinator production meetings, all, you know, all of the things that you want to do to keep a set safe. And there's still going to be unforeseen things. I remember on Dick Tracy, you know, one of the stunt guys had to jump from a building to a lamppost and he miscalculated and he smacked his head and he went back and he slid down. Same show, a guy was doing a high jump, miscalculated, missed the airbag. Those are the things where you go, fuck, you know, you're so upset. However, you did everything you could to make sure it didn't happen. And if the unforeseeable is going to happen when you've done everything under your power to keep that crew safe, if you're not doing everything under the power to keep your crew safe, the situation is going to happen. That perfect storm is going to happen time and time and time again. It's not such a perfect storm. It's a perfect storm because from the top down, people didn't do their jobs to keep that crew safe.
Well, this has been awesome. And I see in the chat, I don't know if you guys, there are new people to the channel. So both these amazing ladies have been on our Women Who Rock show, as well as Lisa's wife, Karen Smith. And so check out the playlist, check out Women Who Rock, check out their interviews. Absolutely amazing. And also, we've been sharing their links. So please follow them on Twitter, Instagram. Check out Lisa's book, which is awesome. Babe, do you have any final thoughts?
I just feel like I want to rewatch everything now after this because I didn't know any of this and it just changes my perspective completely. So thank you so much for, you know, taking the time to just explain all these things to us that I know, you know, they're just not, it's not common knowledge.
So yeah, folks, that's it. So tomorrow, 10:30, the trial begins, and we'll see how that goes. And hopefully now, I think you all have a better background going into it. So thank you so much.
Thanks a lot. I really enjoyed talking to you guys. You're a ton of fun.
You guys are the best. Thank you guys.
Thanks for having me again.
All right. Good night, everybody.
Bye, everybody.